Alright, let's get started. You are both famous heroes in the Kingdom of Avernon, a once peaceful land. Now...
Games nowadays look pretty rad. It's the natural course of game evolution. It's not like you can look at a game nowadays and be like, ah, that looks bad. Unless you like playing Rambo the video game or Life of Black Tiger. They look better than ever before, but at a cost. The strive for photorealistic graphics in games require its share of horsepower when it comes to the CPU and the GPU of systems. Newer PC hardware is often required to run the new games at Ultra. Now, modern games often come with graphic settings if you're playing on a PC, ranging from low to something like very high or ultra, or maybe even like insane in some games. You can have it looking like something out of a PlayStation 4 exclusive, to something that looks completely photorealistic almost. Games like Hellblade, Uncharted 4, Rise of the Tomb Raider and the upcoming Red Dead Redemption 2 is just out of this world when it comes to the graphical fidelity. It won't be a shock to you when I say you gotta have a beastie system to run the newest games on the highest settings possible though. It makes nothing but sense. But is it always worth it? Is maxing out all the settings worth it, like a true PC mustard race elitist when it comes to the power to quality performance? Let's find out. In my research, which, let's just be honest, is just a bunch of benchmarking, I discovered that the Ultra preset settings in most games only increases quality and or fidelity by only a few percentage, while hogging way more power and FPS than what seems fitting. The payoff isn't always justified, it would appear, as I sometimes couldn't even notice the difference even when playing the videos side by side. So this begs the question, what's the sweet spot? In some games, and I'm running a 1080 and an i7 4970K, turning down the settings to high rather than ultra would sometimes yield everything from 10 to 150 more frames in certain titles. Some benchmarks in this test even glitched out like every single time on ultra. So take the Rise of the Tomb Raider benchmark at ultra with a grain of salt, but it struggled, dude. It was awful. The visuals rarely have a noticeable impact, which made me think about making this video, as I hear a lot of people with older PCs and stuff like that complain about not being able to run the latest and greatest games on Ultra due to games not being optimized. Sure, everyone with a great PC is bound to always turn the game up to the max, boasting our PC master race powers, but is it worth sacrificing those potential extra 100 frames over an almost unnoticeable visual difference? Now, disclosure, some games do have a small visual impact from the ultra to high, but most often don't, but we'll get to that later. I've benchmarked a few games that are demanding and visually impressive, and many of the titles gave interesting results. The ultra settings seem to be only the cherry on top, the trailer or promotion settings almost, while high is more of the intended playing choice, and this requires way less power and gives you way more FPS. Many gamers will always choose FPS over graphics, and this is probably the best preset if you want the best quality while having a lot of frames. But we always crave the best, don't we? That's why we blow our budgets on insane graphic cards and processors to get that insane 60 FPS, ultra settings, 8K gaming experience. But you don't really need the latest and best to even game at 4K at a reasonable frame rate in demanding games. 4K is still something gamers and TV watchers and movie watchers are still getting into, but there's not a lot of 4K content to be consumed, to be honest. But in the gaming world, there's not a lot of PCs that can handle 4K at a stable frame rate, or a playable frame rate, and no one wants to play a game at low settings, even at 4K. So here's what you can do to get those frames up in any resolution if you're playing on 720, 1080 or 1440p. Without any noticeable difference, mostly at least. By having the preset at ultra in your graphic settings and picking out selective settings and lowering them, you can gain many frames and even reach a higher resolution gaming experience if you have the screen for it. Settings like shadow quality and distance, post-processing and anti-aliasing are all settings that can be the difference between 30 and 60 FPS in some cases, or in many cases. And by turning them down, you'll likely never see the difference unless you have them side by side. Leaving the rest on Ultra will probably be a walk in the park for a lot of you, unless you like playing Shadow of Mordor with the texture packs at Ultra, which requires 6 gigs of VRAM. Thank you very much, if you can believe it. Putting the game on Ultra, then fiddling with the settings for a few minutes often granted me, at least, a performance boost and those extra frames I needed. And I even sometimes get that game up to 4K, since I have a 4K screen and I want to use it. So I think you should do that as well if you have some troubles playing the newest released titles on the Ultra settings and you're just like, well, where's my frames? So what's the whole deal with the video? Let's try to summarize, at least try. So what I'm saying, trying at least, is that you don't need the latest and or the best to get an awesome gaming experience with a lot of frames or high resolutions. An older GPU can last a long time, and even do 4K if you just turn down the appropriate settings. At this point in time, I run a GTX 1080 in my system, and in some titles I get frustrated when not reaching that sweet 60 FPS, sweet spot at Ultra, but turning down like 1 or 2 settings often makes me surpass that essential 60 frames per second mark, while leaving me with a quality that's superb. Even when I had my 970, I managed to get 4K gaming to work by just sacrificing at 1 or 2 settings that wasn't even noticeable. Even playing on a laptop that's 5 years old now, running 2 GTX 880Ms 8GB, I managed to do 1080p at kinda Ultra by just turning down 1 or 2 settings. I never felt like I was missing out on that 1 extra god ray through the roof, or that 1 extra pixel on those shadows on the ground. So use the horsepower you got while you have them, and use them for as long as you can, and save up money for something good. Then repeat. So this video is basically for people maybe getting into PC gaming and don't have a lot of money, because PC gaming is expensive. And components are very expensive. I don't even know a better word, it's just fucking expensive. And there's probably a ton of videos out there that have guides on what kind of settings you can turn down for basically any game probably. And if you just study it a bit, you'll see that you don't really need 1080 Ti to run 4K or Ultra at 1080. I just wanted to get this video out there to show people that you can actually play games at high resolutions and on good quality settings, even though you have an old GPU or processor. So it's definitely possible. So do some experiments and hopefully you'll get those frames. Anyways, I will thank you all for watching and I will see you in the next one.